Welcome back to Our Issues Milwaukee. I'm your host, Andrea Williams. Our focus this segment is on sex trafficking. Believe it or not, a fifth of homeless youth in the U.S. and Canada are victims of human trafficking. My next guest has been involved in organizing work around youth and the sex trade for 25 years now. She works with many local programs in Wisconsin and across the Midwest to help us all better understand and respond to victims and survivors of the sex trade. It's a pleasure to welcome back to Our Issues Claudine O'Leary of Rethink Resources. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much.
You were here, 5 years ago?
Right.
It's good to have you back, and it's great to see that you're still doing the work. So, has it been 25 years or over 25?
No, it's over 25
Over 25.
years.
Good for you. So it's really important to have someone like yourself working on a subject like this. It's no secret that Milwaukee has gained a national reputation for being a hub for sex trafficking, and it's even referred to as the Harvard of pimping, which is something none of us are proud of. So talk about some of the work that you do with young people on a daily basis.
One of the things that I've really focused in on is trying to figure out how to have more group conversations with young people about this very serious issue. I think sometimes a lot of adults are afraid to talk to young people about such a serious issue, or they're afraid to figure out ways that we can actually have that conversation with young people. So I'm actually about trying to figure out how we can have those serious conversations with young people as a group, and also be able to help young people be able to guide that conversation along. They take a lead in that conversation about how we should actually have the conversation, what we should actually talk about. I'm doing that in the community. I'm doing that actually in environments like, say, for example, the Milwaukee County Juvenile Detention Center, where I lead a weekly group there. I have a weekly group with young people out in the community who have also been trafficked, and they take the lead in that conversation as we kind of come up with solutions to the very serious problems that are facing us.
Yeah, and it's one thing when we look at the statistics and understand how people are affected, but when you're having the conversations and working with the young people every day, it really helps you get a better understanding on how to deal with those numbers that we see. So what are some of the things that you hear the young people say?
I think what's so serious is that for some people that's a surprise, right? To realize how many young people are actually impacted by sex trafficking.
Yeah.
But for young people, that hasn't been much of a surprise. It's their lived reality. It's the kind of thing where they're getting approached online, they're getting approached at school, they're getting approached on the street, they're getting approached by people that they know as well as people that they don't know. It's kind of like a world that you're just walking through in which you realize that this is something that people will try to recruit to, and you have to prepare yourself for how are you going to respond, how are you going to navigate your world each day, knowing that that's something that people do still want to take advantage of you.
Wow.
So that's the reality that I work with.
And it's
I'm not
scary.
necessarily telling young people, right, about something new. I'm not necessarily telling young people about something that they hadn't heard about. So instead, I'm trying to talk with young people and say, what do you do in those situations? How do you respond? Building on their strengths, and then young people are sharing what are the positive strategies that they've come up with other young people.
And it's kind of interesting because when we have these conversations, a lot of people don't realize this stuff is happening right in their backyard. It's not just a Milwaukee thing. It's happening in every county across the state of Wisconsin. And the thing is when you say human trafficking or think of sex trafficking, it sounds like the boogeyman. It is a scary thing, but you just pointed out that sometimes it's people they know, and these traffickers, they don't approach them like, hey, come here. You know, it's kind of like they become their friend, they become someone they trust, they might even buy them new clothes if they need it, they might take them to lunch every day. They actually get their trust and become someone they can depend on, and then they flip the script.
And this could be an adult, this could be a male or a female, this could be a peer, this could be somebody who they've known for a long time, or it could be somebody who knew, but you finally found that person who actually appears to care at that time, right? So that can be a part of it. But it's also true that sometimes young people, they're using different language and different words. So while we're talking about this very serious issue of sex trafficking, young people have their own language, their own understanding. And so sometimes it's important for me as a youth worker to be able to understand the language that young people in a way, I'm almost like a bridge. Like I understand the way adults are talking about this issue and way official systems and law enforcement, and that's an important piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
But it's also important to say that young people themselves have their own understanding about the issue. They have their own language. And so that's a big part of what I'm trying to do, is to help people understand how young people are seeing this. So they might say, look, I'm just trying to do what I have to do to survive. And another person might look at that situation and say, that's what's called sex trafficking. Something else that I think is so concerning is that we still have this persistent belief, it's not just about here in Milwaukee and Wisconsin, but all across our country, in which young people they're faced with the reality that people are more too willing to blame them for their situation than to actually hold a trafficker responsible, hold somebody who's exploiting them responsible. People still try to figure out ways to be able to blame youth for their own situation instead of realizing the very difficult situations that those young people are in.
Wow. So you have kids who go through this every day, as young as 13, sometimes younger.
Sometimes younger.
And one would say, what are the signs that I would look for? What are the red flags? And you're not always going to see them, but there are some things that may stand out to a parent. I'm thinking that if they start coming home with things, new phone, new clothes, shoes, things that you didn't buy, that's probably a sign.
That's something to think about. All of the different signs that are out there, it's more about in combination with a conversation with a young person. So it's true. Say, for example, somebody comes in with a new phone that you clearly did not buy them. It's part of that is about the new phone. Part of that is about trying to have secret communication. So somebody who has multiple social media accounts, they might have the one that you know about, but they have other ones in which they're communicating with other people off to the side. That could be a part of it. Part of it is about just seeing somebody who starts withdrawing from the regular communication that they're having with their family. Traffickers are really good at trying to separate people from their circles of support. That includes family, friends, school, other people who you're around who are encouraging you to do positive things. They're going to try to find ways, whether it be to instigate a fight or to say they don't understand you like I do. So when you see that kind of removal, and it's tough because that's part of what goes on as a teen, right?
Yeah.
Is that people are sometimes trying to separate themselves and say, hey, let me do these things, be independent.
All the things that's listed, like dressing differently, hanging out with new friends, that's teenage stuff, so
even if
it's
somebody has a dramatic change, you might think to yourself, sometimes young people, you might want to just try to try out new ways of looking and new ways of being about yourself. That could mean something that's completely innocent. That could also mean that somebody else is trying to influence you in these negative ways.
Just got to be aware and just start a conversation and really having a relationship where you can have that conversation. And would you suggest having that early on when kids are super young? How young?
Early on. I mean, the thing is that we need to be protecting our young people from a range of different harms that are going on in their life. And so the thing is, you can have that conversation with somebody who's 5 or 6 about what's appropriate for somebody to ask you, or what's appropriate for how somebody should be touching you. You can have that conversation. You build on those conversations so that by 9 or 10, we know young people who are already thinking of themselves as being in relationships. So we need to prepare them, like, what's a good relationship? What does it count when somebody starts to take advantage of you? How can you be able to talk? How can you be able to get away from that? Who should you talk to? Always being able to encourage young people to have that trusted person that they can talk with. But truth be told, by the time I talk to young people when they're, like, say, for example, 12 or 13, they already had those different ideas in their mind. Nobody had necessarily been talking to them about whether it was okay for somebody to try to take advantage of them. You actually get these messages in our culture that says that if you really cared about somebody, you'd do anything.
Wow. And we didn't have social media and all these other things. Our biggest thing, I think, growing up was, those music videos are such bad influences. But man, they have so much coming their way. It's got to be extremely hard to be a young person in this day and age. But the good news when talking about such a heavy subject is that there is more training that's available to everyday people like myself, as well as law enforcement. And I think that when people have a better understanding of different things that's happening, then they are able to help make a difference. I read a story about an airline stewardess
That's right.
Yeah, they kind of noticed that a young lady was with an older man, wasn't having eye contact, was scared to speak, and she kind of knew that there wasn't something right there. I think she left a message for her in the bathroom, and she was able to save that young lady when she got off that plane by just being aware.
We've had Uber drivers, we've had postal workers, we've
Wow.
had numerous people, because it turns out that sometimes those folks, they've even tried to train more folks who are doing, say, for example, the people who install your cable, the people who are installing phones. Sometimes they get to witness things and see
Wow.
things, whether that be about sex trafficking or labor trafficking, where they see things that are just not right.
Yeah.
And then also be able to be in a position to be able to assist somebody who's seeking out that assistance. And I will point out that the young people who I work with, as well as in many different organizations across this community, that's what we see. Is I think that there's this story out there that says that perhaps young people who are being trafficked don't want help. People kind of say like, oh, well, somebody has kind of got in their mind and they're going to refuse all of that assistance. It turns out that young people do want help.
Yeah.
I've talked to young people both here as well as all across the state of Wisconsin in my efforts, and I've heard directly from young people, we do want that assistance. The question is, do we have the things that would actually be able to be of assistance to young people? I've been working with young people who've been applying for jobs for months and they don't get a call back. So the question is, can we actually be able to support our young people in the needs that they actually have? That includes young people as again, even at 13, they might be in situations where they're having to support themselves. How are we going to be able to support those young people?
Wow. And with that said, before we run out of time, to actually help raise public awareness, there is a statewide campaign that's taken place. So if you would tell us a little bit about that and where people can get more information.
Well, as you said earlier, when we think about the efforts that we have to be able to create more training and more support, part of it is just about educating all community members. And as a part of the statewide efforts to combat human trafficking, there's actually a public awareness campaign, and you can actually find out more about that campaign by looking at this website, which is www.wisconsintalks.org. That's going to actually take you to a site that's being put together by the Department of Children and Families. So as a statewide agency, they wanted to create this public awareness campaign where community members, including family members, can learn more about what those signs are and about who you can reach out to for help.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that information. And I love the fact that there's so many different individuals and organizations that are working together to help
Most
make
definitely.
a difference. You were just a part of Pathfinder's panel of experts in talking about sex trafficking and how young people are impacted. So it just really, like I said, takes a village
Definitely.
for everybody
Partnerships
to,
are key.
yeah, bringing those resources together and understanding what each can do to help change lives.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And it's great to see you again, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you again soon.
Definitely.
It's a pleasure. Claudine O'Leary is a national consultant for Rethink Resources, and for more information, you can visit her website at rethinkresources.net. That's going to do it for today's show. I'm your host, Andrea Williams. As always, I thank you for watching, and I do hope you join us again next week as we take another look at our issues, Milwaukee. Have a great day.